listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday. We're talking right now to my good friend Lee Cohen. He is a columnist and commentator appearing on GB News, The Spectator, The Sun, The Telegraph, Fox News. He is an Anglophile, and I love it. American and Britain first. Thank you for being here, Lee. How are you?
Delighted to speak to you, Martha. How are you?
Good. So it was one of those beautiful days that the British do so well, which was the VE Day celebration, which starts a whole week of celebrations for them. But it was what everybody was waiting for, right?
Well, it certainly was. Whether it was what everybody was waiting for, the UK have the same divisions, unfortunately, that we do with, the establishment not necessarily celebrating their great and lofty history, just like ours doesn't, and with some of their institutions, not actually emphasizing the great achievements to save civilization like what we celebrate on VE Day. So I wouldn't say it's everybody, but it certainly has been a beautiful tribute and a meaningful one as well.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because we got to see Prince William and his family. Kate looked fabulous. The kids looked fabulous. The king looks great. So it was a very, very good day, I think, so far.
Yes, indeed. And, what I think we need to point out, particularly for Americans and we have no royal family, is that, VE Day holds profound significance for the royal family because they're a connection, of course, to Britain's past and history, but also they, certainly Queen Elizabeth, particularly, she lived through the war, and the late Queen Elizabeth, and shared the nation's hardship, making that leadership deeply personal. And so her loss a couple of years ago is a great loss because that connection to this very significant event in Western civilization is no longer there. But King Charles and his family and the Waleses are soldiering on proudly.
So I want to just shift gears a little bit because a couple of days ago, Harry gave an interview to the BBC after his court case failure that has happened. And, it just seems like the guy just can never get the timing right? I mean, he just doesn't know what to say, when to say it, or how to say it.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. He certainly doesn't get the timing right, but he also doesn't get the substance right because he is so tone deaf with, a person of privilege, and he and Meghan constantly with their victimhood narratives. And, they stand out. While today the royal family is out there, reminding us of what's important, reminding us of the sacrifices that you can't pay back of those who lost their lives fighting for Western civilization. That's what the royal family's up to. Harry's out there complaining about his security and poor little me and how the media and his family have treated him badly. And it's just so appallingly tone deaf, Martha.
Lee, this is Joni, and I have a question. I was following the whole trial and with Harry. If he wants his own security, can't he just pay for it? Is the poor guy broke? Is he down to his last $100 million?
Well, Joni, in fact, he tells us that he does pay for it. And, security is expensive. And certainly, for someone who's consumed with resources as Harry and Meghan seem to be, they want to preserve every penny. But, I mean, really, I'm playing the world's tiniest violin here.
Yes.
No
sympathy, really.
for this couple who hold no official positions, and, let them fund their security like private citizens do and like private celebrities do.
Now, do you think, Lee, that even in their quietest moments, that the Sussexes, as they like to be known as today, do you think they really realize how close they were to actually being, the number 3 family that people would want to see on a day like today? But yet they played this selfish game at the end of their grandmother and grandfather's life. And now they're somebody that when people see them coming, they groan instead of cheer.
Well, Martha, for most of us, being a member of the royal family is such a rarefied honor that it's hard to even imagine. But what's really hard to imagine is anyone just throwing that away. And, I personally, I think that it was always Meghan Markle's plan to, use her marrying into the royal family for all it was worth, and then to step back and enrich her own pocketbook and her own reputation. And that's what she's tried to do, but quite unsuccessfully, because people see through their despicable tactics. And, the Queen and Prince Philip were beloved figures. You just brought it up. They made their last years, they haunted their last years with all of this nonsense and this trouble for the royal family, accusing them of racism and, just saying that her experience and Meghan's experience in the royal family drove her to the brink of suicide. This is absolute rubbish, Martha.
Well, and I tell you one more comment, a question, because I know you've got to go, but it's like, I'm a woman of a certain age. I got up for all the weddings. I got up for I still do. Okay. Prince Charles came to the University of Georgia when I was 18 years old and came to a college football game. So I've followed this for a really long time. And I think what's just frustrating to me is just the tone. You said it, tone deafness that they have, and this inability to really understand the power they had that they threw away.
Well, it's mind-boggling, and this may not go over terribly well with some Americans who will say, well, we got rid of the royal family in 1776. We did, but between you and me, Martha, I think we threw out some good things too, because we really, certainly we have in our president, and we've got a great president now who puts country first. But we don't have this enduring family with, a millennia of history and blood ties to history to remind us of what's important in life. And Harry and Meghan could have been a part of that. They could have even put their personal brand on it in a modernization way. And they had no interest in that. Their only interest is themselves.
Absolutely. Lee, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it very much. And we'll talk again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me, Martha.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Right now, we've got Frank Brown, who's the CEO of Communities and Schools of Atlanta, to talk a little bit about absenteeism. And Frank, welcome to the program. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
So, my mom was a working mom, and sometimes she worked retail, so sometimes she had a day off during the week, and she would take me out of school. And she'd take me out of school, we'd go to the Magic Pan over at Lennox way back when, and we'd do things together because she always worked nights and weekends, and it was an opportunity for us to be together. But the idea was I would have my work done and my grades were good and all that kind of thing. But we're not talking about that kind of absenteeism, are we? We're talking about the problem we've got with kids being absent on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And coming out of COVID, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And to give you a background on CIS of Atlanta, we were started almost 52 years ago here in Atlanta, and now the network has spread across the country. CIS is in 29 states, including the District of Columbia. And collectively, my colleagues and I across the country serve about 2 million kids. here in Atlanta. We're in 6 Atlanta metro area school districts. That's Fulton County, Clayton County, DeKalb County, APS, City Schools of Decatur, Griffith Spalding. So when you add up all those 6 counties, we reach about 50,000 kids in those 73 schools that we serve. We've also now extended our work because we believe high school is not enough to following kids into college, into career, into the military, or into an employment opportunity that gives them a livable wage. So chronic absenteeism, to your point, has skyrocketed. Most of the school districts here in Atlanta are battling this. It's an epidemic across the country. And to let your listeners know, that's when kids miss 10% of the school year. So I think it's 180 days of school. If they miss, I think, 18 days, they're deemed to be chronically absent. And after COVID, where we saw coming out of COVID, insecure housing was a big issue. We give out emergency assistance to our schools, and this year we've given out over $400,000, and the number 1 and 2 issues is housing and utilities. So chronic absenteeism also has a hand with, insecure housing. And so those 2 things are, and then you also look at an economy where it's starting to slow down, and people are worried about their future, worried about what's going on in Washington and tariffs and cuts that are coming down the pike. It is a whirlwind storm around children who need more support now than ever.
Don't even get me started about all the misinformation out there, because I get so frustrated. I get so frustrated because, look, I'm on the right, and I don't think that in general Republican candidates or Republican elected officials get a fair shake. I think it's doom and gloom when Republicans are in office, and it's hunky-dory when Democrats are. Now, you could disagree with me, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. But
actually, I'm sorry. My background,
please.
I worked on Capitol Hill for Arlen Specter when he was a Republican senator, so I'm very
good.
Very close to the right side.
Okay, well, no, I don't mean you have to be, but I know you're not talking a political game.
I just wanted to give you that background and that perspective.
Yeah.
That
I love it.
I understand very clearly how Republicans are cast that way. But this is the good thing about what I do is it's not a Republican or a Democratic issue.
Right.
It's an American issue.
So,
it's an American issue that, kids are displaced because of their zip codes. The kids we serve in the metro area have a 4% chance of getting out of these zip codes due to systematic barriers that they have nothing to do with. So we're dealing in Vegas. I don't think too many people would go into a scenario where you're dealing with 4% odds, but we use that, and I can tell you our results really speak very clearly. For the kids on our caseload, 98% of them either graduated on time or earned promotion to the next grade.
Well, it's very simple. But even when you go on from high school to college, just showing up is about 50% of the game.
Oh, absolutely.
And if kids understand that, they relate to it better. But we've got to do a better job on certain things, too. Now, do you think, Frank, we're ever going to find out the truth about COVID and schools? Because I think we overplayed the hand. My grandkids were in school in Kentucky. They were closed from March of 2020 to April of 2021. And my grandchildren are still, they're doing fine because they got great parents that are involved, but there are certain areas like socialization and other areas that they are still having a hard time.
Yeah, I the numbers are devastating for the kids we serve. Kids of color, for example, fell behind 7 months in math and 7 months in reading on average. And now you look at all the COVID funding, our school districts, God bless their souls, all of them, all these school districts are facing massive deficits because they spent up all the COVID money that had to be spent by, I think, last September, and they have dipping, revenues from property taxes where people are losing their jobs because some of the layoffs that are rippling through the economy, especially from government agencies across the metro area. So it's really just like a hailstorm of different things. So parents are more stressed, more devoted to just trying to keep the lights on, and we see that in our emergency assistance. Again, housing and utilities. Think about that. If a child doesn't have stable housing or lights, how can you expect any positive outcome? These are basic American necessities.
So what are your thoughts on Senate Bill 123? I know it didn't make it all the way through, but it'll be coming back.
I thought it was a good start. I thought it was a good start, and I think that, more needs to be done. Okay, not suspending them automatically is a great thing, but how about paying for services like CIS or increasing? The state of Georgia, the legislature gives the CIS network in the Georgia state about $1 million. Well, our colleagues in Texas, they get about a $20 million investment from the state legislature, regardless if it's Republican or Democrats, because these wraparound support, we are like the Red Cross of wraparound supports. We do everything the school can't do, whether it's get that mom transmission fixed, whether it's pay that mortgage to keep them from having to sleep in that car that night, whether it's turning on lights, whether it's putting food in refrigerators. The staff, I call our site coordinators, they're unsung heroes. The work that they do is just quiet, but it's methodical and impactful. And that's why we were able to get 98% of those kids either to graduate on time who were deemed at the beginning of the year being most off track. It's about providing a loving support because families need it now, especially families on the lower end of the spectrum who are just being shellacked with prices that are run. You go into the grocery store, you go into Kroger, you put 10 items down, you cry.
Yeah.
It's just at all extremes, gas, lights, basic necessities. Those prices have skyrocketed for people who have zero. There were studies that show people who make $50,000 or below have zero discretionary spending, zero savings.
Frank Brown is the CEO of Communities in Schools in Atlanta, and the program's Being Present Matters. So what have you found when you implement this program?
What I found, like I said, the statistics speak for themselves because we're an evidence-based model, but we also found that there's nothing like having a loving adult in a child's life. There's no magic. There's no secret potion. It's a loving adult who's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that child is present and ready to learn. That's whether we're getting them to school with an Uber ride if they miss the bus. That's anything from going and picking them up from colleges when they can't get back during COVID. That's paying tuition. We gave $100,000 to 400 kids who are in 11 states all across this country, either pursuing a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree. That's $100,000. And what we're really aiming for, Martha, and I think you appreciate this, something about full participation in the American dream for our kids. That's a voter. That's a homeowner. That's a taxpayer. That's a value add, a leader, not a tax burden, but a taxpayer. And I think any American, Republican or Democrat, would want that for their children. And we believe, despite their economic conditions, they have the same right to full participation with an education, with experience, with an opportunity. We don't need no uneven playing field. Give them experience, give them education, give them support, and they can thrive and compete with anybody in the world. That's what we believe.
And where can people get more information?
You can go to our website, cisatlanta.org. We have volunteer opportunities you can definitely give, but we really want people to invest their time, their talent, and their treasure in us because we're worth it. Mackenzie Scott gave us $4 million. Steve Ballmer, the LA Clippers owner, just gave us $4 million. And Ann Cox Chamber was one of our, founding, supporters back in 1972. So we've been blessed to have all types of Americans, from billionaires to everyday mom and pops, support our work because we know that it works. And then not only did we start something here in Atlanta, it's spread across the country and is benefiting the whole country. So who wouldn't want to invest in something like that?
Frank Brown.
cisatlanta.org.
Frank Brown, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Andrew Clyde is joining me right now. He's the congressman for the 9th Congressional District. He serves on appropriations, and also we want to talk about the big, beautiful bill. Andrew, welcome. How are you?
Well, good morning, Martha. Great to be with you on WDUN.
Yeah, so you had Scott Bessent before your committee this week, and I'm sure he's appeared before you several times. He has done a terrific job, I think, in not only the work that needs to be done inside Treasury, but explaining it to not only you guys, but the American people.
Absolutely. In that clip that you just ran, the critical thing that he was talking about is the ability to trace a payment back to an appropriation. All right. I mean, that's accountability right there. And
that's
when you
accountability 101. That's,
right,
that's
exactly.
Yeah.
And when you have almost a third of the payments going out, not having that accountability, then as he said, that means the federal government, those agencies for which those payments are going out, cannot pass an audit. And that is so critical. And, to Secretary Bessett's credit, you said that we had borrowed less, like $50 billion less. Well, in the first 6 months of this administration, of this fiscal year, we had borrowed over $1 trillion. It was almost over $200 billion more than was expected and more than happened last year, and that was during the Biden administration. So it is absolutely critical that we get to the point where we can audit these agencies, and the federal funds that go out can be completely tracked back to the authorization, the appropriation by Congress.
So it does look like we are making progress as far as individual committees passing what needs to be done related to the big, beautiful bill. But there's been some snags and there's been some challenges. Last week, Congressman Collins told us he thought that the House bill would be passed by Memorial Day and that it should be able to get through the Senate by the 4th of July. What are your thoughts?
Well, that is certainly our goal. This coming week, we are going to have markups for the last of the committees that are required to put forth their legislation. I'm on the Budget Committee as well, so as soon as they finish those, we will get all of the 11 committees' legislation and put it together in the big, beautiful bill.
I know. That's just what I'm calling it.
And that's fine. I firmly believe that the Senate, once we move forward and pass the bill on the House floor, the Senate will pass almost exactly what we passed. I've spoken to a number of the senators already. Lindsey Graham came to us and met with what's called the Republican Study Committee this past week, and he said that they will die on the Hill to pass what the House passes. So I'm pretty confident that the senators, whatever we pass in the House, the senators will work very hard to pass in the Senate. And so, that's the goal, and I believe that we will accomplish that.
So what else is this the singular focus that you guys are working on right now? I know that there has been some legislation passed this week. You just give us an update.
Sure. Yes, we in appropriations are also working our various appropriations at the same time. It's not, the budget reconciliation is not the singular focus, but it is the most important focus right now. I will tell you that next week, the president will be signing a piece of legislation that I brought forward, and that was a number of weeks ago. It passed the Senate last week, and it's H.J. Res 42. And that is a bill that takes down a Biden-era rule from the Department of Energy that restricts home appliances, puts greater government regulation on those home appliances, which is completely unnecessary. So that will be the first bill that I will have President Trump's signature on in this Congress. So I'm really excited about that. That is being effective. And because that affects everyone in the 9th District, really everyone across the entire country. It would make all their home appliances cost significantly more, and we don't need that. So that was one piece of legislation. And then I introduced another piece this week, a couple days ago, and that was called the Constitutional Hearing Protection Act, and that would remove suppressors from the National Firearms Act, and it would help restore some of the Second Amendment losses we've taken over the last 100 years. And I introduced it with almost 40 original co-sponsors. So I'm very excited about that. And I honestly believe that piece of legislation will become part of the big, beautiful bill of budget reconciliation, because it primarily has to do with the taxing of a constitutional right.
Well, sounds like y'all are really busy now. Are you still in Washington, or are you back home today?
No, I got in very late last night.
Yeah, very late last night. And then will you be going back next week? Or are y'all pretty much in session until Memorial Day?
I am going back early next week. We'll probably be leaving Sunday evening and going back next week, and then we'll be in session until literally we pass what has been, the last bills that the House needs to pass, in these committees, in Ways and Means, in Energy and Commerce, in Ag, et cetera, in order to put the big, beautiful bill together.
So
now I will tell you this, Martha. Yes, we've hit some snags on it, okay, but I firmly believe we are going to pass these pieces of legislation in these separate committees in a fiscally responsible way, because that's our commitment. We're not going to do this in a way that adds to the deficit and adds to the debt. We want to bend that curve down, and we want to, start getting us back to a balanced budget.
Well, Andrew, Clyde, if people need to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You can go to our website at clyde.house.gov and just put in a little comment in there. And if you need help, you can certainly call our district office. And I've got a great staff there. If you have any issues whatsoever with any of the three-letter agencies like the IRS or the Veterans Administration, or really any federal agency, even passports if you need them in a hurry.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
I want to treat people fairly, whether they voted for me or not. I want to have a unified country. It's very hard because the media is so fake. The way you ask questions, every question is asked in a negative vein. There's a toy company that took a toddler's, whatever, but you don't talk about the fact that gasoline is down at numbers that nobody believes possible. You know why they're down, by the way? Drill, baby, drill. We're drilling like crazy right now.
We try to make sure every question is fair, Mr. President.
Look, every question you ask says a very negative slant.
No, but look, I'm just curious.
And I'm fine for responding to you. I don't think you're very difficult at all to respond to be honest with you. But you know what? You should ask some positive things.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and that's President Trump doing what he does best. And let me tell you something, folks. He is the most reasonable person that you're hearing on the stage. Jasmine Crockett just did an interview where she said people just want to get rid of immigrants so they can roll back child labor laws and have children, poor children, do the jobs that immigrants were doing. You know what happened in that jobs report? Is for the last 4 years, all the jobs have been going to immigrants and very few jobs have been going to American citizens. I don't know why they track that, but they do. In this jobs report, and it was ahead of expectations, the jobs went to American citizens and very few to immigrants. That's, and I mentioned about the MSNBC thing, where they're saying, how are we going to cover the 250th parade? I'm an Anglophile. I watch the VE Day stuff. There's checkered stuff in every history of every country, even your favorite country in the world, that you think is better than this one. And when I say you think, I'm talking about the people that would question how to cover a parade for the 250th anniversary of America. Even the country you think is the greatest in the world has problems. I remember my friend, Bob Andrews, who used to co-host with me, and he was one of the first Democratic legislators from this area. He was a brilliant guy, Jay Andrews' dad. And he said to me, we are the worst country except for everyone else. Meaning that every country's got problems. Every country has things in their history they wish hadn't happened. Because we're humans. But if you look at the balance of the United States of America, more people are breaking in than want to get out. Nobody's breaking into these countries that aren't in the West. Okay, you get outside of the Western world, the United States of America, Canada, Western Europe, nobody's breaking into any other countries except for ours and the rest of the Western world. Okay, why is that? Because we have freedom, but then we let people in that say, no, we want to institute Sharia law. No, we want to make it the way it was in the country that we left. And what I'm saying is, no, we're not going to do that. There is an American culture, and that shouldn't trigger you. If it does, look in the mirror and see what's wrong with you. I think it's extremely important that we look at all these things. Scott Bessent, our Secretary of the Treasury, did an interview because Warren Buffett recently announced his retirement. And Warren Buffett has been very quiet on the whole tariff discussion. Very quiet. Warren Buffett is 94 years old and he just retired. Logan, I'm not looking for that day, 94.
No, I'm not either. I'm hoping to retire, but well before then.
But he obviously was doing what he loved.
Of course, yeah. He loved what he was doing.
And he was sharp enough to do it.
That he was, and he also helped out a lot of people with their McDonald's orders for breakfast and everything.
And you know what's funny is he drove old cars. He lived in the same house he bought 50 years ago, even though he's for a long time, he was the richest man in the world.
That he was, yeah.
Okay. And he's still one of the richest men in the world. And maybe he's the richest again now that Elon Musk has lost so much money. But he had a saying, and Scott Bessent's talking about it. And this is what I'm going to say to all of you naysayers out there, the ones that protest against this country, the ones that say we're doing everything wrong, the one that won't give Donald Trump a chance. Here's what I say to you folks.
When I entered public service, I spent more than 40 years in the asset management business. There, one mantra guides one of the world's most successful investors: never bet against America. Warren Buffett coined the phrase, and it's been his lodestar as long as he's been in the game. Never bet against America captures a time-tested truth. The American economy is unstoppable. Throw whatever you will at our capital markets: the Great Depression, 2 world wars, 9/11, a COVID recession of the last few years, or sky-high inflation. Each time the American economy gets knocked down, it gets back up again. And it gets back up even stronger than it was before.
And it gets back up because people take risk. Small business people, big business people, everyone in between. Government doesn't take risk. Government doesn't build anything, make anything, because they don't have any money without you. Okay? Government is a drag on the economy, should not be an economy growth. This is why we had the kind of inflation we had, because so much money was put into the government that they couldn't spend it all. Well, they did spend it all. But that's what causes inflation. You put a whole bunch of money into the economy, it makes inflation happen. Don't bet against America. Okay? And you know what? I'm getting really excited about 4th of July next year. I'm trying to find out where plans are going to be made and what's going to happen here in our community. I've reached out to the governor to say, hey, I would love to be a part of any kind of planning on a statewide level. I'm digging and looking to see what's going to be going on around the country, because I know there's going to be some once-in-a-lifetime things that I can take my grandchildren to and that I can go to that will make my parents proud. My parents have been gone a long time, okay? But they loved this country. And did they have everything go right in their life? No, they didn't. Okay, my dad had to change jobs quite a few times before he finally found the job with round-the-clock hosiery that he loved and he ended up doing till retirement. My mother had to start over in her career after she'd been home for 18 years raising children, and had to start over in her 40s and build a career until she was 69. She didn't have a great day every day. Neither did my father. In addition to the war and being a POW, there was no help for veterans when he got home. They told you to go get married and have babies. Well, he was already married and he had the babies, but he had a drinking problem. And he had a drinking problem because he felt guilty about surviving when so many young people had died. And it didn't actually come out until he was probably in his 70s. He never actually verbalized it. He just buried it. Now, you know what? Even with all that pain that he had, he was like the best father. And he wanted so much for us, and he believed in us because we were the future to him. And he could fix the mistakes of his life through us. And that's what we think about as parents, right? So never bet against America. And you know what? You people like Jasmine Crockett and the woman on MSNBC, who I don't even know her name, who's saying we need to fact check a parade that we're going to have for our 250th anniversary. We've got big problems we need to deal with related to that.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.